Thank you all and welcome. We're thrilled to have Chuck Stone here, who's the representative of Braver Angels in Illinois, and an adjunct professor at DePaul and lawyer. Try not to hold that against him, he's a lawyer. He's going to be talking about a topic that's very timely, how to have to bridge the political divide with some advice for the upcoming holidays. And so, with great pleasure, I introduce Chuck Stone.
Thank you very much. Okay, before I forget, you should have two handouts. One is about Braver Angels, the other is about the Braver Angels website, so that you can get sort of continuing help and a chance to think through this very important topic of engaging across the divide during polarized times. So I want to start by thanking everyone on the committee, the Adult Ed Committee, Eric Seymour, and Pete Todd Church for helping with the technology today, as well as John Jentz back there, yeah, and Marcia, and Reverend Price. And I told Reverend Price, it was a pleasure meeting him, that I did go on the website and I saw this really great sermon that he did a few weeks ago on oneness, not sameness, I think was named it. I went to check and it had aged out on the website. But it's a wonderful thing, and it's great to see churches taking up this thing. I wanted to start just by something that's torn from the pages of the newspaper. This was the American Psychological Association came out with a study just, I think it was on Friday. So it's a brand new study, and it's on how bad the emotional welfare of America is at this point. And we've heard about that for the younger generation for years, about depression and anxiety and the feeling of isolation. But here's the headline from this report of the study. A fractured America is causing people's stress levels to go through the roof. A new American Psychological Association survey has found. Overall, the results indicate that loneliness and emotional disconnection have become a defining feature of American life. And it goes on, there's many things. 3/4 of the people surveyed said they are more stressed about the country's future than they used to be. And that this kind of stress is a significant source of stress in their lives. So this is just kind of repeating what we already know about the harm from the political divisions that are causing not only dysfunction in our government, but dysfunction in our society. A kind of toxic culture that breeds breakups in relationships, political violence that we have already seen, and that there hasn't been, in my view, any real response to in a way of stopping the fighting, and doubts and distrust of each other as Americans. And all of this, the political stuff that we see mirrored, is a way of looking at the world about, there's good people and there's bad people, there's enemies and so forth, that bleeds into all of our relationships. So I think that all of the sectors of society need to, including organized religion in our churches and synagogues and mosques. So I am a retired lawyer. I've seen this problem coming down Main Street for a long, long time, and I was waiting for an organization to kind of pick up the ball and run with it about the growing, what is really hatred across the aisle. And I was surprised that didn't happen. I expected a billionaire philanthropist to make it their issue, or a consortium, the universities getting together and we've got to fix this, or political leaders saying this has gone too far. And kind of meeting together to draw up rules of engagement, but that hasn't happened. So I was very interested when I saw Braver Angels had started. I looked into them, and I'm very happy that I did. And a part of what we do is this helping people think through this new time that we're in, this polarized time that is so hard on all of us, and why it results in people not wanting to have conversations or only wanting to do it in order to convert people on the other side. So this is a course not difficult to find. This idea of brotherhood, sisterhood, is replete in scriptures, no matter what your faith tradition is. This is a quotation from the book of James. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And the next line is, for man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. And I think we can tell that we are in the opposite, the flip system in conversations across the divide. Everyone is slow to listen, quick to speak for the purpose of showing the other person is foolish and you come to your senses, and very quick to become angry. And anger has almost become a sign of strength. And it's on a hair trigger, a sort of a reflex right now. Theologian Howard Thurman said this about the hatred. Jesus rejected hatred because he said that hatred meant death to the mind, death to the spirit, and death to communion with his Father. He affirmed life, and hatred was the great denial. So I find something from the Jewish tradition that is really relevant about these bad habits, and you may, it's about the danger of contagion, of perversion of this gift of language, the gift of speech, and using it in ways that attack and bring people low and express envy and so forth. And you may remember that Moses' family went against them. This is in Numbers 12, if you want to look it up. Miriam and Aaron, his sister and brother, were gossiping about him and also kind of expressing envy about his high position. And they may have been whispering to each other. God heard it and smited Miriam. She was smited with a skin condition of white, scaly material. And the rabbis have done 50 million interpretations of this, that she was smited because of Lashon Hara, the evil tongue. So using language in a way that divides the community. And it is a contagious thing, they recognize, so that the person, the priest, would examine the person with this outbreak. And is it just bad skin? You eating too much pizza or something? Or is it the marker of a spiritual condition? Lashon Hara, very often, is the interpretation. You've gotten into a habit of speaking in ways that are bad for the community, that divide people. So that person who is found to have this spiritual marker is sequestered outside of the community for 7 days, and presumably to kind of think about what they've done and so forth. So Braver Angels, we're actually in the nature of a relationship. The left can't solve the problem of toxic politics without the right. The right can't solve it without the left. It is a relationship. So at all levels of our leadership, we do have a red leader and a blue leader and now we have an other leader, a person who won't align with one or the other. You notice I'm wearing a purple shirt. We're not supposed to wear blue or red shirts. So, okay, we've got to run really quickly through. Why is this a problem? Why is it so hard to talk to people on the other side? And why do people not want to do it, basically, in America? And you'll see that This was a chart in 1960. Only about 5% of Republicans and Democrats would feel unhappy if their child married someone from the opposite party. And in 2018, it was 35% of Republicans and 45% of Democrats. And it hasn't gotten better since then. This is an example of stereotyping, which is one of the lashon hara, one of the uses of speech to lump everybody together. I'm sorry, I'm blocking, maybe, okay. Anyway, I know left is Antifa, and you know, they're a group that a few of them have sucker punched innocent people at rallies. And on the right is the Daily Show, interviewing Trump supporters at a Trump rally and getting, you know, the ones who say ridiculous things are the ones that are put on this comedy program. And this stereotyping is in support of contempt for the other side, because it begins to seem like everybody is like those people. This is a study. It was actually a review of the literature led by Northwestern University, and it found that we believe the other side is three things: different, like the other, they're not like us in important ways, unlikable, and immoral or unethical. So there was a study in 2020 that found pretty much 80% of Republicans and Democrats thought that the other side lacked American values. So they're not really American, and we don't need to treat them as our fellow Americans. So they're the other. The new polarization, it's no longer about, you know, when I was a young person, it was about ideology and a different way of looking at the world politically. Now it is really an affective kind of feeling of hatred, that it's, the idea is to dominate the abhorrent supporters of the opposing party. And then finally, the intensity of out-party hate is much greater than the intensity of love for our own party. And a lot of people are not in love with their own party right now, but they so fear and hate the other people that that becomes controlling in conversations as well as other things. So we built walls, not bridges, and these are four relatively new language, parts of our lexicon. One is talk to the hand, and there's mansplaining, okay boomer, and shut up Karen. And you know, all of these things, what they have in common is that, well, first of all, most of them, there is a reason for them existing. There's sort of a kernel of substance to them, but they have spread. And the message is, it is not necessary for me to listen to people like that. So whether most of them are aimed at me, mansplaining, okay boomer. I was even the shut up Karen one time. I was in the library at DePaul where I teach, and there was a group of students yakking, and I was trying to grade papers. And so going back to it's okay boomer, going back to when I grew up, when I was in college, the library was a quiet place. And so I put up with it, and then I just turned to them and said, you know, could you please take it outside? There's a conference room. Library's supposed to be quiet. That's a Karen, making a big deal out of what they think is not important. So these are new language things that are now common. So the effects of this affective polarization, which is the feeling of hatred for the other side, and if you dislike or fear the other side, then first of all, you're more likely to let your side get away with things. And that means that if you're in conversation with somebody from the other side, first of all, they're going to be minimizing it and doing what about your side, that type of thing. And you'll be doing the same thing. You're likely to be doing the same thing, minimizing what really was a kind of an error in judgment or something from somebody on your own side. If you dislike or fear them, you are more likely to elect extremists. So Maybe you've noticed that over the, I don't know. And when you elect extremists, there is much more to defend, and there is much more. How could you possibly do that? And then the bias is you selectively expose yourself to certain information and ignore other information. And what we tend to do is we overlearn the positions of our side, and then if you're in conversation with somebody and you feel that your role is to defeat them, somebody from the other side, and they lob a set of facts that seem kind of relevant, that is not part of our picture, it can be very uncomfortable and anxiety producing, because we're no longer there. You know, I taught critical thinking for like 30 years, and we're supposed to be resources for each other. But if your goal is to be a gladiator and to trounce the person on the other side, to convert them to your viewpoint, then you're not open to looking at a new set of facts that actually is an important part of the picture. This is almost good news, is that we don't know each other very well across the divide. And the examples are that Republicans see Democrats as 32% LGBTQ, when it's actually 6%. Democrats see Republicans as 38% earn over $250,000 a year, when it's actually about 2%. And we exaggerate the extremism of the average person on the other side. Again, so we've got this boogeyman built up in our heads, and it makes us not want to talk. And the mistaken belief causes us to see the other as advancing the interests only of a small number of groups or a small part of the nation, and that they support extremism. And of course, we don't care for their elites, and we think if you voted for them that you believe exactly like the person you voted for. So, okay, so getting to the language, we're just going to talk about the top part. These are things that Braver Angels does, learning communication skills for polarized times. And these were designed by a family and marital therapist named Bill Doherty, who is a therapist of some renown with the University of Minnesota. And we've got first the Depolarizing Within workshop that talks about how to talk to people on your own side when they engage in contempt for the other side. They're worthless, ridicule, dismissal, they're not worth even dealing with, and stereotyping. So how do you talk to people on the other side without getting fired from your own side? Then there's Skills for Disagreeing Better workshop, which is our modern iteration, the newest iteration of talking across the divide. And it focuses on values and concerns of the person that you're talking to, identifying them. And we'll get to that in just a bit. A very important thing, if you want to actually understand and connect with someone and see the world through their eyes, what do they think is important and what are they concerned about? Values and concerns. And then there is the Families in Politics workshop. There's one coming up online November 15th. One of the handouts will take you to the site to register for that. All of our events are free of charge. There's a donate button if you want to donate, but everything that we do is free of charge. We're a volunteer organization, 99% volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Everybody in Illinois is volunteering their time. Okay. And then we also have the experiential workshops. We don't really have time to get into that. Today we'll stick to the language. So, okay, the structure of depolarization it's a structure to overcome this reflex that is formed over many years. And it is a reflex. It's like when you're in the doctor hits your knee and your knee goes up, it's automatic. And when we think about, we're going to talk across the divide, it's like, okay, we're ready for a fight. And so part of the skill is actually setting a different tone. It's understanding that that is the reflex and showing that's not what's going to happen now. So it's these polarized conversations start with the exclusive focus on differences. And what happens next is the pattern of clash and retreat. So it's like a chicken fight, and bam, they come together and then they retreat. And the exclusive focus means they don't ever talk about what do we agree about, or what are the values that are driving us, and seeing that there is a value, even if you think, it shouldn't apply in this case or something. And the pattern of clash and retreat means we go back to our corner and say, those people are crazier, stupider, more evil than I had ever imagined. And it's actually the exact opposite of what we find when we do a structured event that brings people together, and they wind up, this is one of the experiential workshops, they wind up being surprised that they like each other, and that there's a range of opinion on the other side, and that they're not all extremists. There's an epidemic of gotcha questions. So people don't ask questions because they're curious. They ask questions to herd you into a corner to show you the foolishness of your ways. The need to interrupt and counterpoint. So somebody says something that you don't believe is factually accurate. Stop. You're wrong, you're interrupting. Instead of, when it's your turn to talk, kind of you bring up, I'm getting different information. Here's why I don't think that's right. And then you say it then. But stopping it as if it has to be a perfect conversation is one of the things that's an epidemic at this point. So, okay, right, I can walk anywhere I want.
I would just stay where you are.
Okay. That you can persuade the other person, I'll move back and forth, that you can persuade the other person, kind of convert them to your beliefs, all in the span of a conversation. That's not how persuasion really works anyway. Usually it's a light bulb goes off and then you keep your eye open for something and then you notice, that guy was right. So the features of the bridging skill. Okay, first is, again, that abandon the expectation that you can convert people to your side. And then the paradox is that as lawyers know, you're not going to be persuaded by somebody unless you trust them. So by you being trustworthy and listening respectfully and so forth, you are establishing a chance. Maybe you can persuade them. The truism is that if you treat somebody respectfully, they will probably, not always, but will probably respond in kind. And they may not do it right away, but they may see, well, this person's being really respectful, really nice with me, and it's going to take the edge off of, doing the mic drop after mic drop moments. So you're actually kind of leading by example. You're being the model for it. And it usually has a good effect. In reality, there is no magic wand. If you got family members you're going to see for Thanksgiving and you've never been able to talk to them respectfully, then don't expect that you're going to suddenly be able to. So here's the introduction to the game plan here. Listen first and mark the occasion. So listen first should sound like the book of James. Be quick to listen. And then mark the occasion sounds like the book of Chuck. And that's the, it just seems to me the idea is when something good happens, you're going to not just let it pass, you're going to verbalize it. So first of all, you're going to use active listening. And how many people have had some training, some knowledge of active listening? Okay, a very good number. So it's paraphrasing back. And you're actually proving to the other person. So they say, I'm concerned that climate change is going to cause a disruption to the economy, that we're going to spend too much on it. And then you paraphrase back. So you're worried that our economy is going to be hurt by some of the experimental thing, whatever. You paraphrase back what they said. Then verbalize any agreement or common ground. That's the good stuff, and you found it. pat yourself on the back, but don't just let it go on. Either if you do a short acknowledgement while you're doing active listening, we actually agree about that. We actually agree about this. Or in your perspective, when you're given your view of things, you're going to say, we actually agree about that part, and I go even further, I believe this and that. So mark the occasion so that the other person knows you agree with them. Verbalize values and concerns that come across. So it sounds like for you, the orderliness of the process of immigration is really important. Or you're concerned that if we don't have more protection at the border, that people are going to come in who hate American and blah, blah. So you are noting how they see the world. You're trying to see things through their eyes. They express what they think is important in life, a value or the worry that they have, and you verbalize them. And then you ask questions of understanding, not the gotcha questions, but, I didn't quite understand, a clarification. I didn't understand when you said this. Could you tell me? Or invite them to say more about a life experience. If you can tell that there was a story behind something, maybe they shorthanded it, just say, I'd like to hear more about that. That sounded interesting. And then you can always ask them, how did you reach that position? So can you tell me how you reached that position? Which gets them talking again, and they can fill it in. As you can't say it sarcastically. How did you reach that position? Or something like that. But it works to get them talking. So this is the basic format. We call it the lab skills. So it begins with the listening, and that's the active listening, the reflecting back or looping, paraphrasing back. Then you acknowledge, agreeing when you can, the good stuff. Clarifying if needed, that's the question. I didn't understand you use this term. How does that fit in this? Could you explain that term? Identify the underlying values and concerns, and invite personal stories, or how did you reach that opinion or that position? Okay, because there's going to be a test. So you're not in your head. That's why I'm repeating this a little bit. And then there's a pivot moment. And that's because a lot of times, we want to say our stuff too, but what if the other person is not at the point of listening to you yet? And that can happen. So if you say, I really, I have some concerns about this too, you mind if I tell you? And you go, well, I got 2 more points. And so your choice is, you've always got 2 choices. You can either listen again and then try again, or you can say, well, this conversation is not really a conversation, and you can find a tactful way of ending the conversation. Those are the choices. And then the perspective is saying what you think. And we're not going to do much about ways to express yourself that don't raise the defenses of the other side. That's in the Skills for Bridging the Divide workshop, and it's in the Skills for Disagreeing Better. The Skills for Bridging the Divide, there is an e-learning course on it that you can find in the handout that has the QR codes. And so, okay. So this, what we're asking you to do is tune your listening to a broader band. Instead of just listening for the position that they take, I'm against this, I'm for this, your side is awful, things like that, or listening for weaknesses. So we're like mosquitoes jumping around somebody looking for a spot that wasn't sprayed with off, and then they sting you there. That's what we do in listening. We're listening, I can make some hay out of that. And then we're not listening to anything else, just ready to jump them. So what we're listening for is common ground, values and concerns, experience, stories and experiences, and questions of understanding. So we're broadening our listening and trying to do more with it. All right? Oh, you were taking a picture. Did you get your picture? Oh, okay. Okay, so this is, sorry. I can't scratch, can somebody scratch? Okay, I'll just let it itch.
I hear that you itch on your...
Oh, very good, very good.
Is there anything we can do to help you?
Thank you, but not now. Okay, So this is a quick excerpt from a rant that was in something helping loved ones divided by politics. And that was Bill Doherty, the marital and family therapist, brought couples on. These are two cousins, and they were raised together. They're about the same age, and one is very conservative, one's very liberal, and they were finding it hard in modern times to rekindle that love that they had always had for each other, and that closeness, that connection. So they were the ones that he was kind of counseling. So this is about removing statues, the monuments and so forth. So let me play a minute here.
I think it's absolutely insane that it's even a public policy issue now. The fact that city councils are even discussing what we do about these statues.
Okay, so how's she doing with the tone? What do you think of the tone? Okay, so it's kind of dismissive, you could say, and it's dismissive by saying there's only one way of thinking about this. I know the way of thinking about it, and I'm not going to listen to anybody else. And this is the reflex that we're sort of fighting against. And so to do that, to set the tone respectfully, you begin by asking maybe permission. Hey, I'm really curious about how people, outside of my usual group think about whatever, X, Y, and Z. Would you mind talking about it a little bit? And, see what they say. And then throughout the conversation, you can show that you are open. You can say what your perspective is and use the word perspective. I'm coming at this from a kind of liberal, democratic perspective. And just by saying that, you're saying you understand there is such a thing as a perspective and that other people might think differently. You're opening the door a little bit. Or you can say, and this is Monica Guzman, who's a brave angel, wrote a book about listening to her parents or talking with her parents who are very conservative, she's very liberal, that I'm thinking right now that, right now. So that's saying, I might change my mind. I sometimes change my mind. You might even change my mind. It's saying again that it's not an absolutist thing. And what you're trying to show, I think, is that you don't have a direct line, to the divine one who's telling you, you don't know the future. And there's a phrase, what is it? Imagining, remembering the future and imagining the past. And it's like you remember the future. Here's what's going to happen. Instead of just a slight adjustment saying, I'm concerned that this will happen, and here's why I'm concerned. So if you say this is what's going to happen, it leaves no room for the other person to disagree. So okay, so we're looking for the other ones.
They represent a time in history, and it's a slippery slope for us to be erasing history.
Can you think of a question of understanding or clarification about erasing history?
What history are you worried will be erased?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. What do you mean by erasing history? How is it happening by taking the monument down? That type of thing. Definitely.
Doing it in our textbooks, we're doing it in our schools, we're doing it in statues. I mean, a statue, you can view it as a work of art, you can view it as a time capsule of history, and if you don't like it, and certainly there are statues that represent something that you may or may not like, then you can discuss it. You can bring your children by and say, look at this statue. It bothers me because it represents a time or this individual did something that I don't necessarily agree with.
Anything that you can agree with so far? Yes, please.
Yeah, I liked her statement at the end that you can look at that statue and use it as a teaching tool. If you don't agree with the statue, you can then use that as a way to, share your perspective on the story.
Absolutely. So what would you say to her?
I would say that.
Oh, okay.
I would say, yeah, that's an idea. I could use that as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
I think I'd bring the viewpoint of if I'm worried about people forgetting what happened in the past.
Yeah, and you could bring that out in the when you're giving your perspective, I think we agree with that, and what you said reminds me of this, and I really believe that that's true. Okay.
That doesn't mean that you rip it down. It doesn't mean that you go and spray paint it, or an angry mob gets together and goes and pulls it down in the middle of the night. That's anarchy. I think there's absolutely no place in our society to have that kind of anarchy, and I think make it a teaching moment, make it an opportunity to say, this is how I feel about things. Obviously, the people who voted to put this up feel differently about it. Or if you live in a city where, 9/10 of the community thinks it's an abomination, then you go through the proper channels of, bringing it to a vote. But again, I think that's a slippery slope. I think once you start erasing parts of history, where do you stop? I mean, if we really are taking down statues for the basis of character of a person, we would erase all of history. All of us have character flaws. So you want to take down statues of people because their character flaws, mean more to you than to somebody else. I mean, I just think once you start that, there's no stopping it.
Okay, so what would be an example? What is a value, something that Kathy thought was important, or a concern that Kathy had that you could, and what would you say to her to reflect back the value or the concern?
Sounds like she's very interested in making sure that an accurate representation of history is always available for people to learn.
Yeah, good. Yes.
And I heard a concern about lawlessness, that there's a process and people are skirting the process, and that's really not a value I have.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then there's the reflecting back. You could pick just anything to reflect back what she said. And you could actually use any of the comments that you've come up with so far as being a reflection back for what she said. Now, note that in these conversations, we probably shouldn't be speaking for 2 minutes straight or 2.5, whatever she was talking. That becomes the debate. So a conversation is sort of, back and forth and back and forth. Sometimes you might have to say, because I have a cousin who bombards me with, he's got 5 points lined up, and I'm like, okay. And I have to stop him sometimes. Say, hey, do you mind, what you said so far, very interesting. You mind if I jump in for a second? And then you do that pivot. Is he going to say okay or not? So, all right. Okay, so this is from a local rapper named Rhymefest, who I ran into at this University of Chicago thing on bridging the divide. And he is talking about these conversations and about specifically that his friends in Wyoming and Montana think Chicago is a hellhole and would never come here. So here is Ryan.
What does that mean when you say, I know how to talk to extremists because I talked to my uncle at the Thanksgiving table? Like, what does that actually look like?
It looks like grace. And in America right now, we can example more grace, more patience. Again, I have a friend who owns a ranch in Wyoming, and they say things to me all the time where I have to exhibit grace. And
that mean biting your tongue, if we're being specific? Just let it wash over you?
That means not being offended at what they don't understand. And not taking personal what they don't know because they never have been here. But opening up a road for them to come. So I've been inviting my friends from Wyoming to Chicago. And some of them have actually come and stayed with me for a week after saying, I would never go to Chicago. And when they see something different, now it allows us to have a bigger conversation. When they see people who feel the same way about immigrants on the South Side as they feel in Wyoming, it allows me to say you both are wrong. And my friends in Wyoming, I bring people from Chicago to Wyoming. And they meet meet some of my culturally blacker friends than me, and they're like, we like this guy, Smitty. You're too liberal. You're a communist. This guy's my type of guy. And so, just seeing that different people have different views and different values, and me not being so personalized of whatever they say that it breaks communication. I think the breaking of communication is where the optimism goes. And so for me, as long, most of the people that I know in Montana just say, don't Colorado it up. So it's cultural and being able to communicate across cultural boundaries, not biting your tongue, but just having enough grace to not take it personally.
So it's a difficult thing to not get triggered sometimes, but I think that's an important thing to remember going in, is don't take it personally. And people are not gonna know exactly the same things you know, and it's important to keep the conversation going. So finally, I'm just gonna refer to this briefly. If you look on the sheet that has the QR codes, there will be a couple of different ways that you could get additional study regarding the family and politics. It's about why families are uniquely challenging, and it's probably because we identify with them; they are part of us. And you get comments like, how could you say a thing like, no decent person could say what you say? And the other part is the old business stuff between family members. You're not the boss of me. Or I don't get no respect. I asked my father why he didn't take me to the zoo. He said, if they want you, they'll come and get you. He loved like my brother better. He gave my brother a BB gun. What did he give me? A T-shirt with a bullseye on the back. I'm telling you, I don't get it. So anyway, I could do a couple more, but we're short on time. And then recognizing common roles. This is a fun workshop to attend. It is 3 hours long, the workshop. There's one coming up November 15th on Zoom. There is also the e-learning course, which is 40 minutes long. It's for free. It's on our website. We have 5 different e-learning courses about communication skills on the website. You can take them over 1,000 times if you want to. Tell your friends about it, and they're free. And the QR code is listed there. So, okay, so we'll leave you with Lincoln, because who else would you like to be left with? So this was in the State of the Union message in 1862 during the war. We can succeed only by concert. It is not, can any of us imagine better, but can we all do better? So by learning and applying these skills and actually having these conversations, you will be a part of that concert and trying to, whenever we bring people together under a set of rules, and you'll be the one bringing the rules to it, but whenever we do that, people get along very well. We are hardwired to connect with other people, and we get along well. But we need to have the courage, the braver angels. The braver part is not because we think we're braver, it's because we think that's what the nation needs. We all need to be a little bit braver. And if we can't do it with people, in our family, who can we do it with? And with our friends. Now, the Thanksgiving table may not be the right place to do it. And there are actually in that workshop ways to tactfully get out of it. And you also go through the different types of family member that fit these archetypes: the sniper, the defender, the gladiator, the peacemaker who doesn't want any politics talked ever anywhere. So Lincoln says we need to proceed by concert. This is a part of it, but there are other things as well. We need to, for example, as a nation, demand that our political leaders accept responsibility for fixing the problem of our toxic politics. That means meeting with each other, and they could start with the political violence stuff, that they often, there's a shooting and right away we gotta lower the temperature of politics. We gotta lower but they're not talking to each other at all. And we're not demanding that they do that. So that's the first thing. There's this huge problem that's causing all of the American Psychology Associations, the things they pointed out, and they're not doing anything. And Lincoln also said, when he was 28, that if destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be the author and finisher. He said that no conquering army would ever take a sip of water from the Ohio River. But he said, as a nation of free men, we must live for all time or die by suicide. And I think we could be doing that at this moment. So that involves, I think, all of us doing what we can, from talking to people on the other side to talking to our political leaders to try to get a change in our politics. So with that, we've got questions, a little time for questions, about 5 minutes.
In the 1980s, mediation came along. It was resisted by lawyers in the beginning, as they classically do, and we're already skilled to do. So all of that is terrific mediation training. Would it have worked, and will it work? Hitler, Franco, Mussolini, or Donald Trump?
Of course not. There isn't any magic wand, but what you also said, that was a more interesting point to me, is that the lawyer, this is the lawyer section, I take it. Lawyers thought they already knew how to do mediation. People think they already know how to talk to people. I think I already know how the world is because I'm a boomer and that's the way it's always been. I'm saying we're in specialized time and people don't realize there is a need to go back and think through this specialized time and what we can hope to accomplish. But of course, when somebody has an agenda, they're gonna stick to that agenda. And no, they're not gonna, you can't do this with everybody. You can't go to Mitch McConnell or AOC and say, stop being yourself. But if the people who elect them begin saying, we don't like that, and we begin punishing the kind of hardball politics that we are always seeing, then that's going to change the political culture. And also it's going to change who runs for office. Because right now there's a lot of people who are well-intentioned, but they get to Congress or wherever, and there's kind of, the leadership says, no, that's quaint, that's nice, but we're not going to do that. We're playing hardball. When that becomes politically dangerous to do, that'll change. And we'll stop electing, people who are like that. Yes, sir.
You think if more people just embraced like a Voltaire approach to freedom of speech, I may disagree with your viewpoint, but I defend to the death your right to have it. Like, do you think that would be, in this setting, a good place to start?
Yeah, but how do you get people to do it? But that is something we used to say a lot when I was a kid. I used to hear it a lot. And now, you heard, when they go low, we go high. But now, that's not what anybody's saying. They're saying, when they go low, we go lower. It would be a wonderful thing. That should be in the education system. When I was in school, they used to talk about socialization. You can't talk about that anymore. You can't use that word anymore because socialization sounds like socialism, and it would be. But people need to be educated into citizenship. There was a speechwriter said something like, good citizens don't grow wild like blackberries. They are nurtured by their families and by their culture. And there was, in my family, there was an unspoken love of the country. And it wasn't saying, I love the country, it was in everything they did and said. And the love of the country needs to begin with education about what citizens are expected to do. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a great saying, and the question is, how do we get there? and people who are espousing free speech very often seem to mean that I get to say whatever I want to say, however I want to say it, and whenever I want to say it. And you know that, no. That's hate speech, or that's whatever. Yeah, yes, there.
I wonder if you see a leader or legislator in our country right now that seems to have this skill set.
Yeah.
Is there someone that you would point out, like, as a good example?
Yeah, well, actually, someone who espouses this kind of viewpoint, Spencer Cox, who was, he's the governor of Utah, and he was on TV a lot with the Charlie Kirk shooting, and he was saying, you know, what they knew and what they didn't know. He's the guy who, when he ran for governor, filmed a commercial with his opponent. And the opponent said, you know, I think I'm the best choice, but if we wind up with Spencer, we're gonna be in pretty good shape. He's a good man, he's a bright man, blah, blah, blah. And Spencer said the same thing about him. When he was the head of the National Association of Governors, or whatever that's called, he made depolarization his thing. And it didn't go anywhere because the nation is not yet, we have been zombie-like in this. That, you know, the problem that's coming down Main Street that every sector of society should be jumping on, every sector has a reason not to.
I also feel it doesn't make great television or great, it's not a moment you can share. When someone makes a statement like that, it's not gonna go viral.
Yeah.
The fist.
And that's the, you know, that's the system right now, that if you can pull a couple minutes out of it, if you give a speech and everybody is just hating it, but you pull out 2 viral moments and, you know, show them to your base, then look like a great speech to me. That kind of thing. So yeah, but you know, I wouldn't say that this fighting, there was a book by Deborah Tannen, who is a social linguist, and it was called The Argument Culture, and the lawyer section's getting up to get me. Is it quitting time?
We're getting close, maybe one more question.
Okay, and Tara, I'll think of what I was thinking of with the argument. Yes, please.
I was just on a cruise with a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, you know, and we had no idea what anybody's politics were, and we didn't talk politics. But somewhere along the way, somebody said something, and this man, who was at least 70, said, wait a minute, I was taught that when you elect somebody, that president is the person you support. There was dead silence, you know, nobody knew quite how to respond to that. I've heard that from like teenagers, but from a 70-year-old, you know, I didn't know where to go with that. But I think that's part of it, you know, some people are just loyal and to what they consider what they learned, you know, as the foundation of the country. And, but it's changed a lot, so.
Yeah, and it's a free country and they can see it that way, they can remember that, maybe you'd say, okay, boomer. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much.